Ted Kaczynski, otherwise known as the Unabomber,
has nothing to do with this, so we can skip the first several minutes. In fact, most of this 45-minute video is just going to be repetitive rambling, so there's going to be a lot of skipping. I sat through the whole thing so you don't have to. But it's really bad that Walsh turns out to be one of those guys who's all like, you know, maybe the Unabomber had a point. No, he didn't!
If you provoke angry, desperate people enough, even if what you're doing is completely legal, and even if in some cases it's rational, then you are inviting consequences that are much more far-reaching than you probably realize, and everybody will feel the ramifications of it. So to give just one example of what I'm talking about, here's the reception that former Google CEO Eric Schmidt received earlier this month at the University of Arizona's commencement ceremony. And he repeatedly sings the praises of AI, and when the graduates start booing, he seems to almost taunt them. It's very bizarre. Watch.
Last December, Time magazine selected its Person of the Year for 2025. And this time, it was the architects of artificial intelligence. Interesting.
And the fact that people booed, according to Walsh, apparently means that they'd be justified in using violence.
They're graduating into a job market that's been largely destroyed.
Whatever destroying of the job market that's been done has been done by your government, not AI. What's been the excuse for job destruction for the 30 years before AI was a thing?
Now, at the University of Arizona, every single student is understandably terrified about this.
Yes, because pundits like you have made them terrified. It's just like when we covered Richard Wolff fear-mongering about job losses because of McDonald's kiosks. It's modern-day Luddism, nothing more.
No, AI is not conscious. It has no sense of humor. It has no capacity for love or wisdom. It cannot articulate a single original argument or insight on any topic.
Except it does, quite often. And its sense of humor is quite often better than most people's. Now watch him destroy his own point and not even realize it.
For example, just to illustrate the point, I asked ChatGPT to generate the best sad poem that it possibly can. I didn't give it any other prompts. Here's what it said. You left so quietly, the walls still ache, still holding shadows only you could make. Your name survives in dust and window light, a ghost that visits every sleepless night. I speak to silence like it answers back, and memorize the sound of what I lack. The cruelest part of losing you, I've found, is waking up each day without a sound.
Damn, that's actually pretty good. And if you've ever lost someone really close to you before, you know that it's exactly right. All the little ways they're supposed to be there but aren't, those are the things that can hurt the most.
And this is also, admittedly, a better poem than what many humans could write. It's probably better what I could write.
Right! It is better! And no, it's not better than what the best human poets could make, but that's shifting the goalposts. You just said,
it cannot articulate a single original argument or insight on any topic.
But as you've just shown, it can! By your own admission, it's better than what many humans can do. It only suffers in comparison to the best, not the typical. As long as it's better than what the average human could do, and trust me, I've read far worse poems written by humans, then your claim has failed miserably.
Now, you cannot consciously store and regurgitate information like ChatGPT.
ChatGPT doesn't store and regurgitate. That's not how the technology works. Nothing is stored in the model. And it's amazing how many of the critics of AI don't understand that basic point.
But we see a future where intelligence is a utility, like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on a meter and use it for whatever they want to use it for. So the best thing to me throughout all the history of capitalism, innovation, whatever you want, is to just flood the market.
Now, notice how he phrased that. We see a future where intelligence is a utility like electricity or water. We'll have to pay for it. And there won't be any competition, just like your power company, OpenAI, will have a monopoly. They'll send you a bill every month, and you'll be compelled to fork over the money in exchange for intelligence.
Well, in your case, it couldn't do any harm. Does he not get how power and water have been monopolized by government? Whereas with AI, there is no monopoly. Not only are there the big companies like OpenAI or Meta or Anthropic, there are tons of smaller open source models. Which won't be the case with AI if government regulates it the way you want them to. Flooding the market with something makes it insanely cheap. That's what AI should be.
Now, under our copyright laws, in most cases, it's legal to make a copy of somebody else's creative work, but there's an exception called, illegal rather, to do that. But there's an exception called fair use, which you probably heard of. If you're using a large amount of content that was created by other people, then the best way to argue fair use is to claim that you have transformed the content in some way, meaning you're using it for a completely different purpose than it was originally intended for a different audience.
And as 2 different courts have found, that is exactly what AI does.
This is why Sam Altman and Eric Schmidt and everybody else feels the need to claim that AI is more powerful than it actually is. If they simply admitted that, in fact, AI is just a gigantic amalgamation of content from other people, then, well, the courts might shut them down overnight.
Or, follow me on this, maybe you're just completely fucking clueless about how the technology works. By the way, transformativeness has nothing to do with power. That's just a concept he shoved into it. The only question is, how many of the expressive elements of the original are left?
A recent court case out of California involving Anthropic shed a lot of light on exactly what these AI companies are doing. This is a quote from the judge's ruling, quote, Anthropic spent many millions of dollars to purchase millions of print books, often in used condition. Then its services providers stripped the books from their bindings, cut the pages to size, and scanned the books into digital form, discarding the paper originals.
And then the judge confirmed that all of that was fair use. We went over that, remember?
So to recap, they bought millions of books and totally destroyed them. And all the people who claim to care about book burning were, of course, silent throughout this process.
What? You really think this is the same as book burning? To destroy the books you legally purchased for the purpose of digitizing them? The same as an act of censorship, stopping people from getting the only copies of the books available to them? You got problems I can't fix, Walsh.
What happens when they've mined the entire internet for information? How do the models continue to improve after that?
You do realize that people are writing new books and creating other new works, right?
Well, that's a question you're really not supposed to ask. And the answer is that big tech wants you to spend your life adding new contributions for the benefit of their models. They want you to work for them for free. In other words, every time you ask their AI a question or tell their AI something, you're improving the model. Every time you offer an original thought on social media or upload a photograph or a drawing, you're improving the model. Anytime you put any content on the internet at all, as we're doing right now, you're improving the model.
I can't for the life of me figure out how this is a bad thing. It's terrible to contribute to the collective knowledge of humanity?
Here's Anthropic CEO lowering expectations just a tad in response to a question from a journalist. Watch.
Give me 1 or 2 examples of what could go wrong.
So the kind of thing that there are 2 classes of things that I can imagine could go wrong. One, again, is around this idea of reliability, which is just it targets the wrong person, it shoots a civilian.
Walsh, he's talking about why they refuse to eliminate their guardrails at the request of the Pentagon.
He did mention shooting civilians like 2 or 3 times there, which is, it's a little creepy that he was so focused on that.
Well, what are you supposed to focus on when the government wants to use your technology for military purposes with no guardrails?
You know, there's a few things that could go wrong. You know, shooting civilians, This thing's really going to start shooting civilians soon, just so you guys know.
Oh, shut up, Walsh.
I mean, AI can probably handle basic scenarios like driving a car down a simple road or...
They're already doing far more than that. Tesla's FSD handles almost every situation flawlessly, except for a few of the rarest edge cases, to the point where they now have regulatory approval to operate at SAE Level 4 autonomy throughout the state of Texas.
But what happens when there's no training data?
No one tell him about reinforcement learning. His head'll probably explode.
It's been a rough week for human authorship all around. On Monday, a viral post showed a Nobel-winning novelist seemingly admitting to using AI to sharpen her story ideas before later claiming she had been misunderstood. On Tuesday, allegations mounted that the Trinidadian author Jamir Nazir had used AI to write The Serpent in the Grove, which won the Commonwealth Short Story Prize. By Wednesday, two of the other five prize winners had come under similar scrutiny. Now, seeing all these cases, you have to ask yourself, when exactly are we getting the superhuman intelligence from these AI chatbots?
I have to ask myself, when exactly AI went from being incapable of writing a poem to helping write award-winning novels in just the 26 minutes since you said that?
The more that tech billionaires like Sam Altman and Eric Schmidt open their mouths, the more they push us toward the primitive state of wild nature that Ted Kaczynski called for about 3 decades ago. We can either rein in the gloating and articulate some realistic guardrails on where this technology is heading, or we can devolve into precisely the primitive dystopia that the Unabomber dreamed of. That'll do it for the show today.
That'll do it for anyone with a functioning brain. Well, that was worthless. I wonder if he had an AI help him write it. Probably not. An AI would have done much better. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.